made possible by the free gift from Dr. Santo Clerico, my friend from Australia, who made a post. And I saw the post. I said, this is worthy to make a video of it. So that's what I've done, and I hope that you will enjoy this as much as I did putting it together. Because your changed life is not a proof that you're saved. When I saw that, it really got my attention. Your changed life is not proof that you're saved. Wow. Because many Christians have been taught that the proof of one's salvation really is a changed life. But if that is true, what do we do with the church at Corinth? What do we do with this church in Corinth? When you read First Corinthians, you discover a church full of problems. Wow, and they did have a group of problems. They were divided. They were suing one another. They were getting drunk at the Lord's Supper. Wow. They were abusing spiritual gifts. And here in chapter 5, one man was sleeping with his father's wife. It wasn't like a secret in the church. He wasn't caught. The church knew about it. In fact, the church was boasting while it was happening. Wow, this was terrible sin going on. But in 1 Corinthians 5:1 and 2, in the International Version of the Bible, it actually reported that how there is sexual immorality among you of a kind that even the pagans do not tolerate. Not even the pagans tolerate. A man is sleeping with his father's wife. And in verse 2, and you are proud. And you are proud. If we judge salvation by behavior, then most Christians today will conclude that the entire church was lost. But Paul didn't think this. Listen carefully to what Paul says out of 1 Corinthians 5:4 and 5 out of the New Living Translation. Then you must throw this man out and hand him over to Satan, so that his sinful nature will be destroyed, but he himself will be saved on the day the Lord returns. Now that's what Paul is saying. Did you catch that? The man is living in open, rebellious, ongoing, unrepentant sexual sin. And the church knows about this. The church knows about this. And the church is proud. But instead of grieving, well, Paul says that the man's spirit will be saved on what? The day of the Lord in his return. That is radical grace, folks. Paul does not say hand him over to Satan. No, he doesn't do that. So that he might get saved. He says that he will be saved. When? And the issue is simply not whether the man belongs to Christ. The issue is not whether the man belongs to Christ. The issue is discipline. The issue is discipline. The issue is consequences. The issue is the destruction of the flesh. But Paul never questions the man's ultimate salvation. Wow. Paul never questions the man's ultimate salvation. And Paul doesn't question the salvation of the Corinthians either. So don't forget that Paul says that the lost pagans behave more morally than the Corinthian Christians. Ouch. That's just bad news, folks. But yet Paul calls this same church saints. He calls them saints. In 1 Corinthians 1 and 2 out of the Young's Little Translation, in verse 2, he says, to the assembly of God that is in Corinth, to those sanctified in Christ Jesus, called saints. He calls them saints and not sinners. Now that's grace. Think about that. If someone visits the Corinthians and judges their salvation by their behavior, they would probably conclude that nobody in the whole church was saved. But that would be it. But Paul came to the exact opposite conclusion. To the exact opposite conclusion. Why? Because salvation is not based on performance. Salvation is not based on performance. It is based on Jesus. Today many Christians are taught something like this. If your life changes enough, that proves you're saved. If your life changes enough, that proves you're saved. If you sin badly enough, well, that proves you're lost. But 1 Corinthians 5 destroys both ideas. Destroys both ideas. The Corinthians were not proving they were saved by their works. No, they weren't. And the immoral man was not proving he was lost by his sins. Wow. But the entire chapter stands as a momentum to the grace of God. The whole chapter stands as a momentum to the grace of God. Salvation is not earned by good works. Salvation is not maintained by good works. And salvation is not proven by good works. Well, otherwise, grace would no longer be grace. Romans 11:6 says this, but if it is by grace, it is no longer on the basis of works. Otherwise, grace would no longer be grace. Notice what Paul is saying here. Here's what he said. If works are added to grace, then grace stops being grace. That means works cannot be part of getting saved. That means that works cannot be a part of getting saved. Works cannot be part of staying saved. And works cannot be part of proving you were saved. The very moment works becomes evident that determines whether you're saved or not saved, then salvation is no longer resting entirely on Christ. Now, good works are good. That's true. And sin is destructive. And that's true. But God disciplines his children. God disciplines his children. Actions have consequences. Actions have consequences. All of that is true. But none of those things are the basics of salvation. None of those things are the basics of salvation. And none of those things determine whether God's gift has been given. The man in 1 Corinthians 5 suffers severe consequences. He was handed over to Satan. But Paul still says that his spirit will be saved on the day of the Lord. He will be saved on the day of the Lord. That is scandal. That's the scandal of grace. It just is. 1 Corinthians 5 shows us that a changed life is not proof that you're saved. A changed life is not a proof that you're saved. And a sinful life is not proof that you have lost your salvation. Wow. Salvation is a free gift of God. Let me say it again. Salvation is a free gift of God. A gift received by grace. A gift not earned by works. A gift not maintained by works. And a gift not proven by works. Jesus saves sinners, and the certainty of salvation rests completely on him, not on ever-changing performances of the person he saved. We do not depend on our own works, folks. It is through and have always been by grace through faith. If you need to sort this out in any way, then may I ask you to contact me at Dr. Cecil at teachtruth.net, and we can do a Zoom or WhatsApp and kind of sort this thing out, as my English friends would say. I'm open for change, so let's get together. Let's talk about what salvation really is. I have a whole different take on this, even deeper than what Dr. Clerico has done here in this presentation that I'd like to share with you that really is from the very beginning, where we start at the very beginning. So what does that mean? Well, I'll share with you my thoughts on this, which is even deeper than what Dr. Clerico has brought us to this particular presentation. So I end everything I say and do, please to say, be blessed. Why? Because you all